and he rolls up at that one Sarah Connor's house, and he knocks on the door, and the woman answers. He's like, Sarah Connor, and she says yes, and he blows her away. That's her. That's the first Sarah Connor.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey guys, welcome to the Video Express, where we dust off old VHS tapes and discuss all things horror, sci-fi, and exploitation. I am Matt.
I'm Katie.
Katie, let's tell our fine listeners what movie we're spotlighting on tonight's episode of Part 2 of Jill Schoelen Month.
Well, we are slithering through this lovely month with oh, that was so bad. I'm sorry. I had to do it.
No,
We are
keep
talking
going.
about Curse 2. We are talking about Curse 2, The Bite, from 1989, directed by Fred Goodwin, aka Federico Prosperi. And let me tell you, if you've never heard of this movie and you're thinking, should I see The Curse 1 to know what's going on in this movie? The answer is absolutely freaking not. This has nothing to do with anything. It is just a movie on its own that got Curse stamped onto it, which we will explain later. But yeah, we're in for a good time tonight.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you say just stamped on there, because it's got nothing to do with the first Curse. But we'll talk about more about that in a little bit. But Katie, why don't you tell us what's going on today in the cinema world?
We are currently celebrating the 32nd anniversary of Toxic Avenger Part 2.
Woo! Toxie, his voyage into Tokyo, probably my second or third favorite of the Toxie franchise. But happy anniversary to Toxie and Toxic Avenger Part 2.
Happy birthday, Toxie!
What else you
All
got
right.
for us?
Okay, so I have 3 things to talk about today, and they're not all super new, but they're more like you may have missed this. So, because there's a lot of stuff coming out. So, the first one is the newest one, and this is a series on Netflix called Sweet Home. And this is a South Korean horror series, and it's just about monsters. It's got some of the coolest monster effects I've seen. I will say, as a fan of practical effects, I will give the caveat that a lot of it is CG, but it is done really well. And basically, it is a show about an apartment building, a group of people that live in this apartment building, and the entire world is faced with a monster zombie outbreak.
Nice.
And to kind of explain that basically means people are just spontaneously turning into hideous monsters and killing everybody. So there's some good character development and a little more depth to that story, but if you just want to see some really cool monsters, definitely check it out. And if you're not the subtitle reading type, I'm pleased to report that it has a really, really good English dub, if you prefer to do that. So
Awesome.
definitely check out Sweet Home on Netflix. And then the second thing is another Netflix series. I went almost all Netflix this time, when last time was all Shudder. This is a series on Netflix called Marianne, and this is another one from overseas. This is a French horror series. It's one of the scariest freaking things I've ever seen in my life. Like, it is absolutely, legitimately terrifying.
Really?
And it's about an author. She's a horror author who's gotten famous writing a series about an evil witch named Marianne. And come to find out, this is based on her own true experiences fighting this witch as a child, and she discovered that if she wrote about her, she would stop bothering her, basically. So it's a series about that, and it's very scary. So yep, definitely check that one out too.
Nice.
And then the final one is definitely our listeners will be into this one. If you haven't already seen it, definitely put it on your Shudder queue right now, and that is Bliss. It's directed by Joe Bagos, and it came out in, I believe, 2019. And it's about an artist in LA who is working on, I guess, her masterpiece, like this painting, and it's causing her a lot of turmoil because she's lost all inspiration, and she's really into drugs and partying, and she starts doing some crazy new drug called bliss, and all hell kind of breaks loose from there. And it's got this crazy like punk rock soundtrack and beautiful lighting and visuals, and it's all shot on 16 millimeter film. It's so badass and fun. So yep, that would be my final recommendation of the day.
Nice. Yeah, I keep coming across Bliss on Shutter, and like I keep getting ready to click the button to watch it, and of course I get fucking sidetracked. So yeah, I'll have to definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. It's you'll definitely like it, Matt, if you haven't seen it.
Cool. Well, thank you, Katie, very much for the recommendations. But now let's, as you said, slither our way over to talking about tonight's movie, which is part two of Jill Schoelen month, Curse 2, The Bite. Of course, again, starring Jill Schoelen, J. Eddie Peck, Jamie Klinger Farr, and Bo Svensson. Katie, tell me and our listeners what you thought of Curse 2, The Bite.
This movie, you know what? I actually did have a lot of fun watching this movie, so I don't want to go into it bashing it. There are definitely some things to discuss, which we will get into. But overall, I thought this was really fun, and I feel like I say that about every movie. It's just fun. I have fun
Yeah.
watching movies. Um, but I think it reminds me of something that I would have come across like on TV late at night, or that I might have like just seen at the video store and had no idea what it was and just checked it out. And so I'm really surprised that I didn't like somehow stumble across this already. So it felt like I was like uncovering this like gem, this
Right.
relic lost to time, because I feel like I've never heard anybody talk about this movie. um, that being said, I thought the effects really are they really shine in this movie. They're really the main character of this movie. There's some interesting plot points, some interesting characters here and there, some really funny moments actually too that we'll talk about. But I think this is really just a grand display of practical effects.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those movies that I mean, like me, like I did watch this on like late night cable television as a kid. It was definitely not a movie that was championed, but it was just one of those kind of, I don't want to say seedy movies because it's not a seedy movie, but it just kind of back then, early '90s, when I was like 10 years old, staying up late, it was one of those movies you would just kind of stumble across and stick with it. But yeah, it's I don't want to say it's unheard of, but we talked about last episode Popcorn with Jill Schoelen being kind of an unsung cult movie that's just not really talked about a lot. This movie, even more so, you never hear people talk about this film. The first one, we're not going to talk about a whole lot because again, this movie is completely fucking different. This is an in name only sequel, but I will say that the first one being technically an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, even then, starring a young Will Wheaton, that movie's hardly talked about. And so then this
Yeah.
weird ass sequel, even more so, has kind of just been kind of buried with time. So it's one of the reasons why when putting together our schedule, when I knew I wanted to do a little spotlight on Jill Schoelen, I was looking through the list of movies and I was like, "Fuck it, we're going to do Curse 2 because nobody talks about this crazy little shit movie."
Yeah, I think it's good that you brought up that even Popcorn, which is a relatively unheard of movie, has a cult following. Like there are people that like Popcorn. Like I've at least seen that talked about online in various like horror communities and whatnot. But like I don't know if Curse 2 even has a cult following. Maybe it does. I hope it does. I feel like everything should. So I hope that there's like somebody out there, perhaps somebody listening, that's like Curse 2 is my favorite fucking movie of all time. That's what I hope. So if you feel that way, definitely let us know.
Well, I love what you just said because it reminds me of something that Stan Lee once said about comic books, and he said that every comic book is somebody's first comic book, and that really hit home because you never know what person is putting their fingers on what comic book for the first time, and I feel the same way about movies, and I feel the same way. That's why on our show I want to spotlight this type of movie, this kind of unheard of, weird, obscure type of movie from the 80s and 90s and stuff like that because I hope there is someone out there that's like, fuck yeah, Curse 2 is fucking badass. Now, the chances of ever running into this person is
Yeah.
fucking that's slim pickings. But I hope that person does exist because that's the kind of people that I want to meet. That's the kind of people I want to talk to is people that love
Yeah.
this type of movie.
Yeah, I wanna be friends with somebody who is obsessed with Curse too. I think there's a lot about this movie that is worth praising. I think that and even the stuff that isn't quite as good, I don't think there's anything, and this is just my personal opinion, but I wouldn't say that anything in this movie is just outright bad, like poorly made or like bad filmmaking necessarily. Like there's some wonky moments, but nothing took me out of it completely where I was like, "Oh, that's bad." Like it wasn't like Howling 3 ridiculous, you know?
Well, all right. So yeah, I'm gonna agree with you that nothing is outright terrible in this movie. There are to me some scenes that just kind of comes across as like they just happen. It's like this scene happened,
Yeah.
and then like the next scene is just moves along. I think the biggest probably problem with the movie is I feel like maybe there was some stuff that was lost in translation. And that's it. Nothing like you said, nothing bad, nothing
Yeah.
outright terrible, just some moments and choices that I believe were lost in translation.
Yes. And, I want to get into each of the characters and kind of how they work in this story, but I think we should maybe just give kind of a quick overview. Thankfully, this is a very simple plot. So I think I can tackle this one.
You go for it.
But essentially, a young couple is on a road trip and they encounter a bunch of snakes, which they hint at perhaps are snakes that are being like fucked with by the government or
Radioactive.
mutated by the government, like dumping radiation. Yeah, they're like radioactive snakes in the desert. And the boyfriend gets bit and they go to a hotel where this guy just happens to be there and he's like, I'm a doctor who specializes in snake venom, and he offers him the anti-venom, and then as they drive away, he goes, "Oops, a daisy! I gave him the wrong antivenom," and goes on this grand chase to try to save him. Meanwhile, he begins to change and mutate, and his hand that got bit turns into an evil, horny snake head. I think that about covers it.
That pretty much covers it. I was really hoping though that when you said two young couple on a road trip, I was hoping you're going to say a road trip in Yellow Sands.
Oh. Yeah, hmm, I don't even know. There's some characters in this movie.
So the our main characters, Lisa and Clark, they stop at a gas station in like the first 2 minutes of the movie, where there's like a creepy gas station guy, basically redneck guy who does the age old warning of don't go down that road, and he tells them not to go to Yellow
Mhm.
Sands, which is the area where
He's the harbinger.
he is the harbinger of doom. Don't go to Yellow Sands because he doesn't come out and say it, but we're led to believe that Yellow Sands is like some kind of radioactive, maybe nuclear test site. Because in the first like 2 seconds, we see guys in like hazmat suits rounding up some snakes and putting them in containers and shit. So that's pretty much the only real exposition we get into like what the fuck's going on. Um, but yeah, you know what? I want to bring up
Yeah, the
something.
the rest is just him changing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you're fine. You're fine. No, I mean, this is what this is. This is a full on discussion. So maybe you can enlighten it a little bit. I mean, this is probably. I watched it earlier today. It's probably the 10th time I've watched this movie. So maybe you can help me understand because maybe I just don't pay attention. And again, I'm like 4 margaritas deep right now, so maybe things aren't firing. Maybe things aren't firing on every cylinder like they should be.
It's definitely a slow night at the video store.
It's
We
a
got the
slow night,
margarita
guys.
machine out.
It's fucking it's slow as shit. Nobody's renting anything tonight. Yeah, all right, so we've got like this minor exposition, right? That there's possibly like radioactive shit going down in this desert place of yellow sands where there's like maybe radioactive snakes or whatever, right? And so the snake gets into Lisa and Clark's vehicle and ends up biting Clark on the hand, right? And then, like you said,
Mhm.
Clark's hand starts to mutate into horny, slithering snake monster. But then Jamie Farr's character, who was this doctor, that is got this antivenom stuff that he's trying to, that he gives Clark, and then realizes it's the wrong thing. So that almost comes across as like the shit that he gave him is also the reason that we're getting horny mutated snake monster hand. So I'm not too sure
Yeah.
what what what's going on. Is it is he mutating because of the radioactive snake, or is he mutating because of the weird antivenom that was given, or does one go hand in hand with the other?
So that's a really good question that I also had watching this movie. So when they roll up to the hotel, everybody in this movie outside of the main characters seem weirdly suspicious. Like they all seem like they know that there's fucking radioactive snakes everywhere, but nobody feels like just saying, "Hey, buddy." You might be want to be careful. There's fucking radioactive snakes everywhere. Nobody says that. They're just like, I wouldn't go out there if I were you. Ain't nobody around for miles. And so there's kind of that vibe happening. I do think that there is something inherently wrong with the snake, but I also sort of started to get the feeling that the antidote that he was given had a poor reaction with the venom, and it somehow like mutated. And I'm trying to remember now if that's somehow glossed over in the doctor's like monologue in the hospital later when she's like saying everything like how this works basically. But I don't know. I do think that maybe he is having like this reaction is was exasperated by the or exaggerated by the antidote that he was given.
Exasperated would have worked as well because because this plot just
Because
became
I was
yeah.
exasperated just trying to fucking explain that.
Yeah, so like as a kid, all I remember was the snake bite causing that. And then tonight when I watched it again, I was just like, "Oh shit, Jamie Farr is really worried about this, giving him the wrong anti venom." Like, what is this? What does one have to do with the other? I get that that's a plot device, used to, I guess, get Jamie Farr's character more involved in the plot. But I don't really know if it was necessarily needed because they could have just left it at ambiguous radioactive snake bite turns man's hand into horny mutated snake monster.
I agree to an extent because they could have just used some of that extra time to just have more monster gags because that's probably one of my main complaints is that like most of the really crazy shit is like in the last 15 minutes of this movie
Hmm.
and everything else is just like them driving around and like Jill Schoelen playing guitar, which honestly I could watch for 2 hours. But aside from that, uh, I think the whole subplot with like the antidote and him trying to get to it at least added something more to this plot if they weren't going to have more monster stuff because
Right.
if they didn't have that whole fun we wouldn't have got that hilarious like subplot with like the trucker convoy all looking for them and like
Oh
all those
god.
interesting characters which are great. It's like one of my favorite parts of the movie. So I think if we hadn't had that, like there would have been no like comedic relief to this movie. I just for various reasons, comedic relief being one of them, I think it would have made the movie like really boring, like
I'm
maybe
totally
even
I'm
more
totally
than
on
it
board with
already
you.
kind of is in
I'm
some
totally on
parts.
board with you about that. I'm not saying that Jamie Farr should not have continued in this movie and done that whole hunt
Yeah.
down. I just think the reasoning behind it should have been different. I think maybe just throw out the whole like
Right.
shit. I forgot I gave him the wrong antivenom and just made it more of like he realizes something is like he's mutating. Like maybe he finds like a blood sample and he's like, well, this isn't right, and something like that. But the whole like wrong
Yeah.
antivenom thing was just kind of off. But no, I
It's
agree.
kinda like a cartoon, it was like a little Looney Tunes, it was like, "Oh, whoopsies,
God,
swapped the
you
bottles, like, my bad, gotta go on this, like, slapstick chase across the road." I think it would've been a lot more interesting if they had just stayed at that at that motel, and we had just been introduced to, like, the cast of characters that are all staying in the motel as this guy
yeah.
downstairs is, like, mutating and potentially starting to kill everyone. That would've been a lot stronger than this, like, chase road movie.
I was thinking that while I was watching, and I was like, "Man, this would have really been a cool movie had they blended it a little bit with like Toby Hooper's Eaten Alive, where all the action takes place in this hotel, and maybe Clark's arm continues to mutate, and like every night, like he sneaks out of bed and kills off a new victim in one of the hotel rooms. You really played up with it, and it could have had a really high body count like that." And like done somebody like trying to figure out it's got to be one of the guests, and like it could have been really fucking cool. Not that this movie isn't fun, but yeah,
Exactly.
they could have done a lot with that. Also, I want to say that you really hit the nail on the head earlier when you said that our main characters of Lisa and Clark are very they're in this group of people that seem to be completely different, and you're right. And you said Looney Tunes. It's almost as if Lisa and Clark are like normal Earth beings that are stuck in like a world of Looney Tune characters all of a sudden. Because you brought up the whole
Yeah, they it
you brought up the whole convoy thing a while ago, and that part just makes me fucking howl and laughter every time, because it literally for like a hot minute turns into Smokey and the Bandit Part 2.
it's amazing, and I think what I find most, like, hilarious about that whole thing is, like, so what's his name? Jamie Farr, the doctor. He's like on his way
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
He's like
Klinger.
urgently like, I gotta save this guy. I gotta save this guy. And it's not even like I gotta save this guy. It's like I gotta save this guy so his family doesn't sue me or I get thrown in jail for manslaughter.
Right.
And it's like this really urgent task. But he had enough time to stop for a little afternoon delight with that one trucker lady, which I find hilarious.
So this is what I really find hilarious. You know who that trucker lady is?
She looked so familiar, but I don't know who she is.
Are you familiar with the first Terminator movie?
A little, yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen
All
it.
right, so you know how Arnold's mission in the first Terminator movie is to kill Sarah Connor. So when he arrives in
Right.
1984, he goes through the phone book looking for Sarah Connors, and he rolls up at that one Sarah Connor's house, and he knocks on the door, and the woman answers. He's like, Sarah Connor, and she says yes, and he blows her away. That's her. That's the first Sarah Connor.
Yeah. Okay, wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Um,
She was a real scene stealer. I kinda they coulda used her more and I wouldn't have complained. She was very funny.
She was funny, and it was weird that, like, she continued to, like, be in the movie. Like, you kinda feel like, "Oh, she's a trucker, she's a funny trucker." Then, "Oh, she's a love interest to Klinger's character." And then, like, she keeps showing up, and then the next thing you know, she is standing beside Klinger at the very end of the movie. It's just like, "Holy shit, this weird ass
Yeah.
trucker lady just fucking somehow became another character in this
Sh
entire
she
movie."
just became yeah, an ensemble character.
But yeah, it's so many weird things that happen in this movie. I want to bring up one thing that really tickles me, and I can't believe I just said tickles. And I'm the person who edits these episodes, and I'm gonna have to keep that in because fuck it. The one thing that really
Yeah, you
tickles my
have to now.
fancy. So I love how this movie has not one creepy gas station harbinger, but two creepy gas station
Yes!
harbingers. Like these motherfuckers, like we're gonna one
That's
up
so good.
everybody. We're putting in a second creepy gas station with a second fucking harbinger. Yes. So
That
Al Fan, who was basically in every television, he appeared in at least one episode of every television show from 1970 until like fucking 1999. Alfan is in fucking everything. But he shows up at our second gas station, which is much more creepy, much more Texas Chainsaw Massacre ish, um, and does even more of our warning of snakes and shit. And he proceeds to tell our lead character of Clark that he lost his best friend, aka his dog, to a snake bite, only for our character of Clark to discover the dog is actually not dead. The dog is shackled up in the goddamn basement of this creepy gas station, and the dog has mutated into this monstrous, creepy snake creature. Uh,
Snake dog.
but now, you know what? Saying that, Katie reminds me. Obviously, it was the snake bite that created uh, Clark's mutated
Oh, there you go.
because if
Yep.
it did that to the dog, then it must be the bite. That which
So
means
that antidote didn't do shit. It
that
didn't matter what
no,
antidote he got.
no. It took me fucking like rationalizing and talking about it to realize what the fuck was going on. But yeah, it's the radioactive snake bite that causes the mutation.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that snake dog is terrifying
Is
and hilarious at the same time somehow.
so you know what? I felt three emotions. I thought it was kind of three emotions. And again, that's because I was probably drinking
Well,
margarita.
we do contain multitudes, so
Yeah. So, is it just me, or I felt a little bit creeped out because it is kind of gross looking at first. Like when you don't fully see it, when it's peeking out, it's like ooh. But then
yeah.
when it fully pops out, it's kind of goofy looking. But also like it's fucking
Yeah.
heartbreaking. Like I was a little bit heartbroken
I know.
because like
I felt sad for the little dog.
yeah, exactly. It's like whimpering at first before it, spoilers, fucking bites out the throat of Alfan's character.
I don't know, it's kinda sad. I don't know, I feel like I thought I wonder it's like one of those things that if this were like a TV series or something, we'd get a whole episode with just that backstory
Yeah.
of that dude and his dog.
Listen up, Shutter. Justin Martell, if you're out there, maybe you can produce Curse 2, the series for Shutter.
Curse to the bite.
You heard it here first. So I gotta ask
Curse to the bite, the
the
series.
series. Yeah, I fuck you. Sign me up, man. I will watch that shit. So do you know why?
Yeah.
Do you know why I keep calling uh Jimmy Farr's character Klinger?
No, because when I looked him up, the only thing in his entire, like, IMDb that I recognize is that he's Ebenezer Scrooge in Scrooged with Bill Murray.
What? I didn't know that. No,
I didn't either, now I do.
so no, the reason I keep calling him Klinger is because that's what he's most famous for. Is Klinger the cross-dressing soldier from MASH, the TV series?
That's right. Yeah, so, yeah, I would not I remember, like, MASH being on my grandparents' TV when I was growing up, so, like, I've seen an episode of MASH or several, but I wouldn't have recognized that character, so that's really funny that he's in this movie, like, they always these movies that we talk about have the most random casting sometimes.
They do, but it's funny that like that right there just kind of shows like the little minor generational gap between you and I. Like, cause I grew up on fucking Mash, so when I watched,
Yeah.
when I first saw Curse 2, like I was like, oh hey Klinger, but like then somebody like your age who's only like what, uh maybe you're less than 10 years younger than me, right? I think.
I turned the big 30 this
Okay, so
year.
yeah, okay, so you're 7 years younger than me, but it's funny like a mere 7 years, and you're like I have no idea what the fuck he is.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, that's like there's like there's like kids these days. There's people now that are like only like 20. They're only like 10 years younger than me and they're like I've never heard of this. I can't even think of an example, but they haven't heard of things that are like were part of my like daily life that are just embedded into my brain. So,
Right.
I'm starting to experience that for the first time.
It's kind of an odd feeling.
Yeah.
All right, so well, we'll save Jill Schoelen for last because this, even though it's her month, that means that we can
Okay.
go through everybody else first and then rest on her. So what did you think of J. Eddie Peck, who played our literally our main character of Clark?
So he's not the best actor. No
No.
offense. Sorry if he's listening. He had the look, he looked great, he was very cute, and he's charming. Like, there were moments, like, there were some really cute moments between him, and Jill Schoelen at the beginning, like, before everything gets fucked up,
Right.
that I thought were really nice, and I think once he started, like, mutating and stuff and, like, especially in that, like, that final sequence where he's just all fucked up, I really started to, like, feel for him. So I think his performance was a little bit more sympathetic. So, like, I don't wanna just say he's a bad actor. It's just there were some very funny line readings,
Right.
early on in the movie. But in general, I think as a character, I think he's a decent enough protagonist, I guess. He kind of It's weird that he's like the protagonist and the antagonist at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it starts to go in a direction where you think like, oh, I guess Jill is going to be our main character, but then they didn't like quite do enough with her to make it that. So that'd probably be like one of my only complaints about it. I do think it is very funny. One of the funniest parts is when he just casually is like, "Oh yeah, I think it's totally justifiable for that guy to kill and eat his wife because she cheated on him. Because what else would you do?"
Oh my god. Yeah. I don't know. I don't even want to go there yet. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about that more when we talk about Jill's character, but I did just want to point out that that was a really hilarious scene.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's not a great actor by any means. He's serviceable. I think that's the best word to use. Is he's a serviceable enough actor. I don't think he's got necessarily the
Right.
chops to be a leading man, but I know he's not a like he's not
He's no
terrible.
Tommy
Terrible.
Wiseau, so
But the one thing definitely had going for him is motherfucker is man pretty. That's for sure. Like that was a good look.
oh, yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
looking
he
man.
had the hair, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Um,
real cute.
so, he at least he had that going for him. And like you said, once he starts mutating a little bit, um, I don't know. He was up and down for me with how I felt about him. But once he really, really got sick, like in the last like 15 minutes of the movie, that's where I feel like he shined.
Yes, agreed. And I mean, I guess I don't know if that's more of a testament to his performance or to the amount of special effects that were globbed onto him, but there definitely and that's mostly a joke. I do think like specifically there's like like one of the final shots of him when he kind of like is quote unquote like just himself for a moment like before he gets stabbed with the pole. He It's really sad. Like, it actually was kind of sad. I was like, "Oh man, I like forgot for a second that you're a human. You've been like puking up snakes for the past 10 minutes and I
Right.
forgot that you're just some guy who had no idea any of this was going to happen."
All right, we'll bring him up probably a little bit more when we start talking about Jill Schoelen. Let's move on to
Yeah.
Jamie Farr's character, Cleaner's character of the Doctor.
Yeah. He's pretty funny. Like, I think he's a pretty charming addition to this movie. I mean, we've already kind of talked about his subplot isn't as cool as you or I would want it to be.
Right.
But that being said, I think eh, he adds some funny moments, and I almost feel like in a lot of ways for at least a big portion of the movie we're actually like with him. Like, he's almost like our pseudo protagonist
Yeah.
for a little bit because we just kind of stay with him while he's trying to figure out where these guys went so he can give them the antidote, and he doesn't even know that this dude is like turning into a snake monster. So I do like that. I love all of his interactions with the other guy at the hotel, played by Sydney Lassick. I think you say it Lassick. I biffed that one, but we're just gonna keep going. We're full speed ahead. It's too late to turn
Nothing's
back
gonna stop
now.
us now.
He is very funny. Yeah, nothing's gonna stop us now. He's very funny. He has some really great. It's like it's similar to kind of what we kept saying during Popcorn, is that I just wanted more out of some of these side characters. They focused a lot on like Jill and the doctor and the guy, the snake boy, who I'm just going to call him Snake Boy from here on out. And they focused a lot on them, and while the doctor is pretty funny and interesting on his own, like the other two characters just weren't interesting enough to really carry this movie. So I think it would have been nice if we'd seen some more of those folks from the hotel.
Right.
So yeah, Sidney Lassick being one of them. He had some very funny interactions with the doctor.
So, my feelings on Jamie Farr's character, which I don't even remember his fucking name in the movie. I'll just keep calling him Doctor, the Doc. Um, so as much as
Yeah, I just keep calling him Doctor
yeah,
too.
as much as I did enjoy him in this movie, I'm not going to say I didn't like his character. I did enjoy seeing him. I feel like he is in a completely different movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's so and this is just to me, but he feels like completely out of place and like a different character in a different movie. Very like I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say
Yeah,
slapsticky, but very goofy. Like he's almost playing.
yeah,
It's not that he's playing Klinger from Mash, but he's playing that sensibility of, uh, hey old buddy, old pal, goofy, fun loving kind of dude. And when it transitions to Jill Schoelen and J. Eddie Peck's characters, they're much more like serious and in a completely different movie. Like Jamie Farr is kind of in a pseudo comedy, while everybody else is in a fucking horror movie.
yeah.
And it's not a horror comedy. Like it's the weird.
Yeah, it's not. It has a couple of funny moments, but it's playing it straight for most of the whole movie otherwise, and that's why you're right. Like those scenes with him are, if I recall correctly, pretty much the only ones with any
Yeah.
comedy in it. And he's playing it like he's in a sitcom.
Yes.
Like he
Yeah.
just bumbled his way. Like even his whole plot is a sitcom plot. It's like, oh, whoops a daisy, I switched the antidotes, gotta go find
Womp
him.
womp.
And then, at the end of the half hour, he wraps it all up and everything goes back to normal. But and so that's how he's like, the stakes feel so low for him because like you kind of already know that Snake Boy is just fucked, and so the antidote isn't going to help him. So his whole like quest is just futile.
So I every night when I get in bed, I watch Three's Company before I fall asleep. Right. So That's just that's just who I
Yeah.
am, and you're so fucking right. Jamie Farr is playing it up. Like, that character is straight out of an episode of Three's Company. Like, he accidentally gave Jack or Janet a
Yeah.
fucking, like, the wrong medicine, and now he's gotta team up with Mr. Furley to figure out where they are, if they're at the Regal Beagle or not, because we've gotta give him the right antidote. Like, that's what it comes across as.
It's so silly, and it's like I feel like it's one of those things that as I was watching it, I didn't, and I'm watching it for the first time also. So like I'm really just trying to take it all in, and I'm not really it didn't really register how goofy that whole subplot was. I kind of was just along for the ride. And like now talking back with you, I'm realizing how strange that plot was in this movie. Like it just makes it seem a bit messier now.
But and again,
I say that with
yeah,
love.
same. That's what I was about to say. Like, I'm in no way saying that. I might be sitting here saying that he was straight up like being in a sitcom, and while it was a horror movie, yes, that's exactly what it felt like. But I'm in no way saying that it's really bad. Like, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's endearing. Maybe is the word.
Yeah, I think that's good. It is endearing. It's just it's I don't know. It's kitschy, it's cute, it's fun. I don't know. It just adds something because otherwise, like this movie already kind of feels like it was just like a little blip on the radar and kind of just came and s- went straight to VHS, sold some stuff and just kind of like lived on the shelves of video stores from there on out. But it's got its charm. It's still pretty cute. And I think if it didn't have like these more interesting or charming, like funnier, like if it didn't have this ridiculous sitcom subplot, then what would there even be to talk
Right.
about except for like the last 15 minutes with all the snakes?
Well, he Jimmy Farr's character, the Doc, he is fun, and it is a ridiculous subplot. However, you know what is not technically fun? That is Bo Svensson, who plays the sheriff. Bo Svensson is just a mean.
Oh,
He's
yes.
a mean ass, honorary motherfucking sheriff in this movie for no good goddamn reason either. Like he's
For no
somebody
reason.
pissed in his cornflakes, and he is out. He is out for revenge because he is just chewing up the fucking. He is he is chewing that scenery like a $2 steak, and he is fucking kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah, he is so mad. He is angry as if it's like the day before he's set to retire and now he's got to deal with all these fucking snakes. Like but that's never established, you
Ever.
know?
Like I feel like
And
at any moment he's gonna look to like his deputy and be like, "I'm too old for this shit." Yeah.
I was waiting for some sort of comment like that because it really, like, he really just was so mad and so aggro like the whole time, and it's pretty funny. I also really appreciate that his character's name is just
The
the
sheriff.
sheriff, not Sheriff Jones or Sheriff Walker. He is just the sheriff, the only
It should be
sheriff.
like Sheriff Billy Badass because that's what the fuck he was.
Yes. And I just found out that he is the Reverend in Kill Bill Volume
He is.
2, and I'm very excited about that because I was like, I know I recognize this guy, and Kill Bill Volume 2 might be one of my favorite movies of all time. So I'm sad that I didn't immediately make that connection, but I'm very pleased to read that.
So I'm going to wax poetic just like for a split second about Bo Svensson. So he's I said earlier Al Fan, who plays the second creepy gas station guy, was in basically like every like an episode of every show ever made from like 1970 to like 2000. Bo Svensson also is like this huge television actor, very popular in the 70s and 80s. He, he's kind of like a good old boy, and he was also in a lot of television movies and a lot of action stuff like that. He's probably most well known to the general public as playing in the Walking Tall sequel movies, the original ones, of course, not the one with the Rock. Um,
Mm.
and also, he was in. This is where I get a little nerdy. He was in the original Italian *Inglorious Bastards*, which when Tarantino remade the movie,
Oh,
yeah, when
cool.
Tarantino remade the movie, he actually bought Bo Svensson in for like a cameo. So that's my brief
Oh, that's awesome.
little fun talk about Bo Svensson. But yeah, he plays just a hard nosed, nail biting asshole of a sheriff, and again, it's for no reason. And I found it so weird that when he runs into our main characters, Lisa and Clark, like he pulls him over or whatever, and like he suspicions something, so he immediately wants Clark to take the bandages off of his arm, which is, folks, this is the arm that is mutating into a snake. So Clark doesn't want to, unveil this. And this sheriff is just so fucking mad that he is not taking these bandages off that he arrests him and throws him in the back of the car and just being a
Yeah.
dick. I'm just like, on what earth is that going to happen? Like, you're being arrested because you're not taking your bandages off.
Yeah, I don't know if he like thought that I don't know, I feel like I read somewhere when I was like rereading the plot synopsis that they like suspect that he might be like a drug addict and like the bandages are hiding like his like track marks or something, but it's just so just like is he doing anything else to make you suspicious? Like I guess he was acting a little sketchy, but it's so funny that it escalated so
I
fucking
mean,
quickly
so
like to
quick.
just being arrested for not taking your bandage off.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about the drug thing because he says something about, we're right here at the border of Mexico and something about drugs. I can smell drugs from a mile away, and you smell like drugs, or something
Oh,
like that. I don't know. But
yep, he's just
I
being
believe the.
sketchy. I to me, I feel like
Go ahead.
I feel like he's just I don't know, he's just like he's like your stereotypical like cop on a power trip. I don't even think he had any real reason to be sketchy of these guys. He just was like, I don't know, I'm bored and I'm gonna pull them over and they're acting kind of weird. So, hey, we're kind of close to Mexico. Are you sure you're not smuggling drugs? Which is the natural leap in logic.
He is borderline Arlie Ermy from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Like he is borderline
Yeah.
like that bad of a
Yes.
sheriff. And I
Yeah.
don't want
That's a pretty accurate. He's a little less utterly terrifying
he's a little bit less
than that guy,
terrifying,
but the vibe
but
is
he's also
there.
he's a little bit less terrifying, but he's also a little less not as charming either. Like I said, he's right on that fine line
Yeah.
of he's just an asshole. And he's not really like even though he kind of ends up like helping save the day at the end, I still don't feel like he really redeems himself in being that jerk.
Yeah, cuz I really don't feel like he did anything. Like I don't even remember. I don't even think it was was it him who like fires the final shot of the
No.
movie, or was it just one of his deputies?
So, spoilers, it was, so the
Oh, right, that's right, it's the
yeah, so
doctor.
but what was weird, I noticed there was some weird wonky editing at the end, because right before the giant monster snake gets ready to bite Jill Schoelen, um, the deputy raises his shotgun and aims, but then there's this weird quick cut to Jamie Farr with a shotgun pulling the trigger.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really
I didn't even
so
notice
weird.
that.
But no, we were talking about Bo Svensson. Did he even do anything? He was pulling Jill Scholen's character out of the mud. Like he had the rope and he was like trying to pull her to safety
That's
away from
right.
the giant mutant snake. All right, so let's go
Mhm.
ahead and roll into it. Let's talk about Jill Schoelen.
Ah, Jill. Okay, I love her so much. She is like the saving grace of this movie for me. I think she's so charming. She is so fun to watch. Like she just I mean, I don't know, she's just really pretty and charming and funny and interesting. I don't know. I just liked her. I thought her character was like kind of a bitch at the beginning a little bit, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's more just a writing thing and not anything about. I think Jill did the absolute best that she could
What?
with the
Yeah.
script that she was given.
So I will say this: Jill Schoelen is a fucking smokehouse in this movie. Like
Yes.
she is babelicious in this entire fucking movie. Even when she's covered in fucking mud at the end, like crawling through thick mud, like damn girl.
Yeah.
But yes, I thought it was hilarious while watching this today. I'm like, fuck, you know what? I picked Jill Schoelen as a spotlight month for us. And the two fucking movies that I end up picking of hers are the two movies of hers where even though she's technically the lead, she isn't given a whole lot to do.
I know. That was another. I was like, it was so unfortunate. And I mean, we'll talk about it a little more later. Well, that's not that much to talk about. There was less info available online about the production of this movie. So like last time with Popcorn, we talked about how tumultuous that set was and how they fired their lead actress like 3 weeks into production and brought Jill in, and they had to just do a bunch of pickups with like her acting with no one and kind of editing it in later. So that's kind of why I think maybe her character in Popcorn didn't really have a whole lot to
Right.
do. But this one, there's no excuse that I know of. It like she really just kind of like just drove around and was like, I don't know. I just don't know. Like,
Yeah, I just wish there was more for her to do. It's not that she doesn't do anything. She is, almost in every fucking scene. She is our technically
yeah.
our leading lady. There's just not a lot of depth to her character. However,
Yeah.
however, let me just say this. I'm gonna go on record as saying the scene where her and her boyfriend, okay, her name is Lisa, our guy with the mutating snake hand is Clark. When they go to fucking country ass saloon redneck bar and they're up in that fucking thing,
Yeah.
and this good old boy redneck guy grabs her and takes her out on the dance floor, and she just goes right along with it. There's no goddamn qualms about it. She's actually loving it. She's out there bumping and grinding with this fucking redneck on the dance floor, while Clark is sitting at the bar drinking a beer with a fly in it. All right, yeah, and knowingly drinking a beer with a fly in it, and
Yeah.
then like they get done dancing, and she like is walking with this redneck. Like I feel like they're like he's got his arm around her. Like the redneck's got his arm around her, and
Yeah.
like as they walk back towards the bar, and then Clark just has enough, and he smacks Lisa Jill Schoelen, and I am not an advocate for hitting a woman at all. Okay, folks, I do not condone violence like that. However, the bitch kind of had it coming.
First of all, let's rewind. Let's just recap his day really
Yes,
quick. He has to shoot a snake in the head for trying to attack his girlfriend. They then run over
50
like
million. Yeah.
200 snakes in the middle of the fucking road. Then he gets bit by one of the snakes that's like creeped into his car. And then he gets like this antidote. So then they're like, oh shit, he's gonna die. He gets an antidote. And even if you don't know like a single thing about medicine or anything like that, like I really don't even know how like antidotes or antivenom works. But I do know that like sometimes if you go to get like a vaccine, for example, you might feel a little like sore, a little tired. You might feel a little icky for like a few hours afterwards, maybe even a day. And he's like, "Hey, I really don't want to go to this bar. Like I have a headache. I really don't feel good." And she's just like, "Well, whatever. Let's go listen to the music. It'll make you
Yeah.
feel better." And she just like drags her boyfriend to this like crowded country bar where he is visibly clearly not having a good time. And I think like in a healthy situation with like maybe a healthier couple, and maybe if they're both having a good time and somebody wants to dance with the girl and the guy's cool with it, and it's that's literally just it, it's just dancing, then go for it, be my guest, have fun, have a great time. But the fact that like she's just like, you're being so boring and lame, I'm gonna go dance with this guy, I'm having a blast, and then she just like goes and has the time of her fucking life while her boyfriend's like drinking flies at the bar and like visibly ill, is just hilarious to me. Like that is really that made me not like her character very much.
Yeah, so yes, she didn't deserve to be fucking smacked. I mean, but I'm not gonna lie when I say I bust out fucking laughing when he fucking did, because you're right.
Well, she flies across the fucking room, like it's hilarious. Like
I'm laughing again because I just visualize it. I mean, like it's like a comedy skit. Like bitch goes flying.
it's pretty slapsticky, like it's pretty comical. And it did, yeah. So with that, I'm like, ah, she's
But
fine.
you're right. She is being like the worst.
It's gonna get a lot worse later. Him at this point for the rest of the movie, him slapping her is the least of her fucking worries when it comes to
Right.
him. So I'm gonna say not top on my top priority of issues here.
Yeah, she's not. Man, I hate saying this. She is not the most she's not a likable character that much. I mean, there's moments that she is, but
Yeah.
moments like this, like she's not.
Yes.
She's a terrible girlfriend. She knowing like you said, he doesn't want to be there. And what's even crazier is when they pull up to this weird Western saloon redneck bar, like there's this group of rednecks that surround their car that's like trying to provoke them, and she still wants to go in, and the guy that she decides to dance with is one of those guys, and she knows all of this, and she's doing it
Yeah.
in spite of him. And then like she's being very flirtatious with this guy while they're dancing, and then she allows him to have his
Yeah.
hands all over her when they're done dancing and they're walking to the bar, and then she's
Mhm.
shocked that her boyfriend is fucking pissed. Come on.
Yeah, and then later, later they cut to a scene where it looks like it's clear that they've been arguing in the hotel for a while after this whole incident takes place. And she's like mad at
Yeah.
him for I mean, okay, let me rewind. I can understand why she would be mad that he
Yeah.
slapped her, but that's not what she says. She's not like, "I can't believe you would lay," like, that would make sense if she's like, "Look, I know I was being shitty, but you that doesn't give you a right to lay your hands on me." Like, that would have made perfect sense, but she doesn't say anything. She doesn't even react to it. She's just like, "Ah," and then later she's like, "You're stifling me. Like, I don't make my life doesn't revolve around you. Like, I have
Yeah.
plans." And I'm like, You've known this guy for like 3 weeks and you just went on like a road
Right.
trip, a romantic road trip alone, and now you're mad because your boyfriend wants you to spend time with him on the trip that you guys took together?
So that's where it
Okay,
really comes down
okay.
to some weird fucking writing because yeah, they've been she literally says they've been together for 3 weeks and that you don't own me, and I'm just like, this is a really odd thing to put in the script because it doesn't play off. It doesn't play out later. Like this does. There's no payoff to them only being together for
Right.
3 weeks. Matter of fact, it lessens the impact of what's happening because I know it sounds weird.
Yeah, because honestly, because she can just be like, "Oh, whatever, fuck this guy. I've only known him 3" He's turned into a snake.
Yeah,
Well, good thing he wasn't the love of my
right,
life that I've known for
right.
years.
It's so weird. Like that. There's no payoff, and it lessens the impact of him turning into his arm at first turning into horny mutant snake monster.
Mhm.
Um,
I agree, and I think I don't even think those 2 characters speak to each other after a certain point in the movie, like, yes, he's chasing her for, like, a lot for, like, the whole last sequence, but, like, I think one there's a point where they kind of separate, and then other than him chasing her and them kind of like crying in the direction of each other at the end, there's
right,
no like, there's no resolution. There's no, oh, I'm sorry, like I was so mean. I'm so sorry. Like you'd think it would have. I would have liked if and this is getting very nitpicky with this movie and the script and stuff, but it would have been cool to see that she maybe had even like an ounce of remorse, or at least self-reflection on maybe her part in some of their conflict, and maybe at the end she would have like felt maybe some guilt that it's not her fault that any of this
right.
happened, but just guilt of how she treated him on the same day that he turned into a mutant snake monster.
I think, I mean, 100% that's what should happen, but I think that's also asking a lot when you look at who wrote directed this
Yeah.
movie because this was technically written and directed by a first timer. So there like I said way
Yeah.
earlier, there was some choices made that not necessarily the best choices. But real quick, let's go into this. Katie,
Mhm.
what is your favorite scene of Curse 2 The Bite?
Okay, I have 2 answers. The one, there's like this the horror movie version, and then just like the silly version. The silly version is, I love this the whole like the first scene with that convoy of truckers where they're all on the radio talking to each other. That is just so funny and charming, and it really doesn't have anything to do with anything, and it's pretty out of place, but I'm glad that it exists because it made me laugh and it put a smile on my face in these dark times. So I appreciate it for that. And then my other favorite scene is, it's my favorite because it's also the one that grosses and freaks me out the most, and it's when he vomits a sack of baby snakes onto the windshield of the car. I was just screaming at the TV. That is like one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. For some, I don't know why, if that just like made me like, body horror in general like really freaks me out. And I'm not actually scared of snakes. I actually like snakes. I think they're really cool, but I don't seeing like a bunch of them together really freaks me out, and seeing like a bunch of baby snakes like covered in slime like drop out of this dude's mouth onto the windshield was just so gnarly. Like,
Absolutely. So I usually when it would come to my favorite scene, it would usually be that, and that's close to my favorite scene is that whole puking up of the snake stuff. However, I'm going to go with horny mutant snake hand monster finger bang scene.
of course you are. Of
So
course.
no scene. I mean, well, there's plenty of scenes, but there's not many scenes. Let's put it that way that can be pretty sexy, hot, and then also fucking under like creepy crawly under your skin feeling. Like so Jill Schoelen
Yeah, that was very confusing to
Yeah.
watch.
So Jill Schoelen's driving. He's in the passenger seat. She's she's wearing like she's wearing like a skirt or something. I don't know. Like there are so many shots of her legs in this movie.
Yeah, I think she
I
got
will have
skirt
to.
on.
I'm going to congratulate the director
Yes.
and the DP on this movie for all the shots of Jill Schoelen legs. But she's driving, and she's got her her bare legs are sticking out, and like he just takes his bandaged hand and slides it up her legs or thighs, and then goes into regions unknown. And we as the audience
Mm,
know that that hand is not a normal hand anymore. That it's like a
it's
that it's a
fucked.
that it's like his hand is now the like the head of a giant mutant snake monster, and that thing is down there with its slithering tongue. I don't know, dude. Like it's a pretty fucking gnarly scene.
I hate it so much. I thought so I what's really funny, the two things that are really funny about that scene to me, one, that his hand is covered like he's got this nasty bandage hand on and she's just like, "All right,
Yeah,
let's go." Like, that's just disgust like, take the mutant snake out of it, that nasty just the sight of that nasty half-assed wrapped bandage around his hand reaching over her to her thigh, I was like, "No way, he's not." So, that's how I know this was written by a man because no woman would let that nasty fucking bandage near her nether regions.
yeah. Well,
But I digress. the other the other funniest thing about this scene is the absolute just soulless look on his face that whole time.
yeah.
Like, it is the most uninspired, like, finger bang I
He's got
like
the look on his face looks like somebody that's like super drunk pissing their pants.
yeah, like, he's just not there. Which actually is really funny because, like, so you start to get I kind of just had this epiphany. Like you start to it starts to become clear as the movie progresses and as his mutation gets worse. It's clear that his hand has a bit of a mind of its own. Like the
Right.
hand is killing people. He's not killing people. He wants it to stop and the hand won't stop. And like he tries to even like fuck with his hand and it moves out of the way and stuff. So like clearly his hand has developed some sort of sentience and it almost is like he's just staring off at the like what if he doesn't even notice what he's doing? Like he's just staring off the window, like enjoying the scenery on this road trip. Meanwhile, his hand is just like snaking over, like, let me just see what's going on here.
There was a like we said, Jamie Farr is in a comedy sitcom, and everything else is like a body horror type movie. But there you see,
Slash softcore
yeah,
porn.
and scenes like that, there is so much room for comedy that could have. I'm glad they didn't because it is like again, it's kind of it's a gross scene.
Yeah,
But there's so much shit they could have done with that.
I agree. But yeah, that's a good scene to pick because that's definitely one of the what the fuck moments of that movie.
Yeah, like I said, the director, I don't know what he was looking for, what he was going for with this movie, but let's go ahead and talk about what was it? Fred Goodwin, aka Federico Prosperi, an Italian writer, first time and
Yes.
only time writer and director, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Actually no, I take it back. It's just
Yeah,
first
I don't think he's done
no, I think
anything else.
I take it back. I think if I'm wrong, look it up for me. But I'm pretty sure this was his only directorial
I'm
movie.
looking now.
But he wrote this and another movie called Wild Beast. But I could be fucking wrong.
Yes, that is correct. He is a well, so he wrote Curse 2, he directed Curse 2, and then he's only credited as a producer on
Okay.
Wild Beasts and Curse 2, and that's it. So it looks like my dude hasn't worked since
Okay.
1989.
Yeah, because I've seen the movie Wild Beast. I remember seeing that
So,
name. I just couldn't remember if he wrote it or if he produced it. But I knew that name had something to do with that movie. It's one of those wild animal goes
yeah,
amok type movies.
classic. Yeah, I thought that as you for it being a first time director, like that's kind of cool because while the writing is a little lackluster and there are some like wonky editing moments, I also think there were some really nice like visually interesting moments too and like I again, I unfortunately couldn't find a lot of information online just about like the production of this movie, so it's hard to say what's the director versus
Right.
like the director of photography's input. But there were definitely some really nice shots. Like there's a shot where at the beginning when they're at the gas station and right before they find the snake dog, and he like goes down to look for the
Hmm.
bathroom, and he's standing in front of this like kind of dilapidated like wood door, and there's these beams of light shooting in and like getting lit up by like all the dust and kind of like fog in the air, and it's just really pretty. Like it just looks really nice. And so that was kind of pleasantly surprised at like how I feel like it the direction wasn't that bad. Like there were definitely some like good moments. So like to know that this was a first time director, like it's actually not that bad if you consider
No,
that.
I'll totally hand it to them. Did a serviceable job. I keep saying that tonight, serviceable.
Yeah.
No, that not a bad job at all, and especially for a first time filmmaker. However, I'm going to go back to what I said way earlier about. Remember, I kept saying lost in translation. This is from what I can tell,
Mhm.
from what I personally know. This was an Italian movie production with an Italian director, which
Yes.
that's why what's what I kind of mean by lost in translation. And I think I did this when I was talking about Howling Part Two, and when I was referring to like Troll Two. You got this director who we don't really know anything about, but as far as we know, usually when an Italian director uses an Americanized name as his pseudonym, that's usually a good indicator that this dude is like straight up Italian. So I got a feeling that
Oh
I got
yeah.
a feeling there's like a Claudio Fragasso type of deal going on here where dude might not have spoken maybe the best English and probably couldn't convey across exactly maybe what he wanted for certain things. Maybe that's why certain moments came across wonky. Maybe that's why
Mhm.
certain moments seem out of place. Maybe that's why Jamie Farr is in a fucking Three's Company episode and we're watching, a David Lynch episode. I don't know, but
Yeah.
like I said, I'll hand it to him. First time director, good job. I mean, Jesus Christ. And it's actually kind of sad that this was his
Yeah.
one and only writing directing gig because I think this guy could have gone on. I mean, I don't even know if he's still with us. Maybe he's no longer with us. But
Yeah, I can't really find any info on him,
we should
unfortunately.
maybe for next year, you and I should team up and try to do a documentary about this guy.
Yes, let's do it. I wanna know about his life, like, I really wanna know, like, I'm always it's always kind of sad, I mean, and it doesn't have to be inherently sad, but one can't help but find it sad if you go to someone's IMDb and it's like they did one thing and then never worked again, and it's very possible that he had a great time and just was like, "You know what? Filmmaking ain't for me," and he went on to live a long and happy life doing something else. That is what I hope happened. But sometimes it doesn't go that way. So I hope it was positive. I hope it's a good reason that he didn't work again. But yeah, I thought he did a really good job. And I also, since I did call out the cinematography, I did want to just give a shout out to the cinematographer whose name I am certainly going to butcher because he is also Italian. So I am apologizing ahead of time, but it looks like it's Roberto de Torre Piazzoli. Piazzoli. Anyway, that's the most American thing I'm gonna do all day. So yeah, I butchered it, but he did a good job. I thought visually this movie looked really good. Like I thought most of like it's a very you keep using the word serviceable because it applies. It makes sense. Like it's a very acceptable, straightforward
Right.
movie.
Yeah, so if any of our listeners out there know any kind of information on Federico Prosperi, aka Fred Goodwin, please hit us up at Instagram. We can find us at Video Express Pod, and also on Twitter under the same handle, Video Express Pod. I want to know more about this director. I want to find out more about this guy. Find out why he didn't do more because
Same.
again, he did a good job. A serviceable. I'll, I'll go ahead and say that he probably did a little bit better than serviceable for this movie. I mean, it's a fun late
Yeah.
'80s monster flick. So yeah, good job. Um,
Yeah, I think it's hard to sometimes separate like the writing from the directing. But I think when you watch enough movies, you can kind of start to see the difference. And I think that while I think a lot of the issues that this movie suffered from was bad writing, not necessarily bad
Right.
directing, and also the translation issues that you brought up.
So, was Frederico, aka Fred Goodwin, was he the only writer on this movie? I don't recall.
So yes, there was another writer on this movie. Her name was Susan Zaloof. It looks like she is an actress and a writer, and she actually was in Beyond the Door 3 as Miss Chase. I haven't seen that movie, so I'm not sure if that rings a bell for
No.
you. And then it looks like she did some voice acting for a video game called Dreamfall: The Longest Journey, which I've never played, but it keeps showing up in my Steam recommendations. So that's kind of a small
Wow.
world thing. But yeah, so I don't, that's her only writing credit actually. Now that I look
Wow.
at it, she's mostly done some TV, and she it looks like she hasn't really acted since like 2009.
Wow. I kind of feel like that's a kind of telling about this movie that you've got technically two writers on this movie, and neither one of them have any prior history of writing a movie. So maybe that's why
Yeah.
some of the stuff is a little stilted, especially with the weird love thing going on, like only being together for 3 weeks and that whole weird shit.
Yeah, it makes me like it a little more. It makes me it kind of adds like a layer of endearment to this movie, just knowing that it was kind of a first time endeavor for a
It
lot of
makes me
people.
kind of wonder how they got the job because so the I believe it's the executive producer of this movie. I know I'm going to butcher this guy's name. A video asanatus asanatus. I don't know. I'm just going to call him
A
a
sonnetus?
Sonatus, a video, a Sonatus. Anyway, dude
Yeah,
is a producer
yeah.
of a lot of genre films. I know he did the original Beyond the Door, which time out, folks. If we're probably going to cover this movie in a very near future episode of Video Express, because Beyond the Door is a very there was a lot of popular Exorcist ripoffs in the '70s, but probably none were better than Beyond the Door. So I just want to throw that out there. But anyway, he was a producer of Beyond the Door. He was also a producer of Madhouse, which is another movie we'll talk about in a future episode. Piranha Part Two, and of course, he was also the producer of the first Curse movie. And that's kind of how we ended up with this movie, Curse Part Two. It's because this guy, this video, he produced Curse, which again was a H.P. Lovecraft inspired movie starring a young Will Wheaton, and he produced it, so he therefore kind of held the rights to the film. And I know he hired Frederico to write and direct this movie under the title The Bite. So this movie wasn't filmed under the title Curse 2. It was actually filmed with just, called The Bite, which is going to be about a snake, and mutant snakes or whatever. And it wasn't until I guess closer to release or upon release they change it to an in name only an in name only sequel, Curse 2 The Bite. So other than that though, I don't
Mhm.
know how Federico got the job. I mean, like I said, this a video guy. He produced all the Curse movies, so I don't know any behind the scenes knowledge of
Yeah,
that.
I'm not sure either.
So
Yeah, I don't know. This is, yeah, I'm gonna repeat what you said earlier. Is that if anybody listening happens to know any other fun facts about the making of this movie, like I looked online and had a really hard time finding anything. I do know that there is a that Shout Factory, I believe, has a Blu-ray of the first Curse and this one on it. But it was sold out everywhere. I couldn't find it, and I'm actually not sure if it has any like behind the scenes tidbits on it. So I don't know if anyone has got their hands on that. Definitely hit us up on Instagram or Twitter at Video Express Pod. And then the other, I had a quick fun fact about a video. Our producer here, the first movie that he ever produced was in
Labyrinth Set,
1969, and the if you translate the Italian name, yeah, the Labyrinth of
yes.
Sex.
Like I've seen bits and pieces of that movie, and actually I can tell you I was 15 years old. It was a summer that I turned 15. I have seen
Mhm.
bits and pieces of that movie.
All right, well,
Yeah,
there
there
you
you go.
go. Labyrinth of
Labyrinth of Sex.
Sex.
So before we move along, I also want to throw out so a video. He produced the first Curse movie, and then of course he went on as a producer of Curse Two, The Bite. There was also, I think, 2 years later, Curse Three, Blood Sacrifice, which is yet another in name
Mhm.
only sequel. This movie had nothing to do with the first one, had nothing to do with the third one, and again, it was a movie that was originally filmed under the title Blood Sacrifice, and then was slapped the curse title on upon release. But I want to throw out that not only does this movie star, because I literally just talked about Three's Company and how I love Three's Company. Not only does this star Jenna Lee Harrison, who played, of course, Cindy Snow, not Chrissy Snow, but Cindy Snow, our bumbling second blonde of Three's Company, but it starred none other than Howling 2 star Christopher Lee.
I am obsessed with that fact, and now I feel compelled to watch Blood Sacrifice. I don't want to get too into it, but is Christopher Lee like an actual main character of this
Yes.
movie, or is he just kind of
Oh
like
no, honey,
there?
he's in it.
All right, fantastic. Then yeah, I'm gonna be adding that to my list
And the
now.
cool thing, it's not it's kind of a somewhat poorly paced movie, but it still has fun moments in it. And then, of course, I mean, you can't go wrong with Christopher Lee. But what's really cool about that movie is not only does it got Christopher Lee, not only does it have Cindy Snow from Three's Company, who I think is one of the hottest blondes of Three's Company, but also the effects for Curse Three was done by Chris Wallace, who was the badass who did, of course, the Fly remake, Gremlins, Indiana Jones.
Oh,
Yeah, so,
cool.
we'll definitely have to probably talk about that at a later time. He was also one of the, creature, consultants, I think, on, Return of the Jedi, which is my favorite Star Wars movie. So, we'll definitely talk about Curse 3, I'm
Hell
sure,
yeah.
in a later episode. But, since we're talking about effects, let's talk about the effects for our movie tonight, Curse 2: The Bite. The effects done by none other than one of the most creative geniuses in the field, Screaming Mad George. Katie, tell me what you thought about the makeup effects in this movie.
Okay, I think if there is one reason to watch this movie, it is for the special effects. Like these are some of the goopiest, most intense, like really gross out there practical effects that I've seen in a long time. It was like we got eyeballs popping out, we got people puking up snakes, we got dogs turning into snakes, we got snake hands growing out. Like it's just so slimy and icky, and like this dude's like whole tongue just slides out of
And
his
slithering.
face, and then his whole head snaps back in half. Like it's so cool. It's just so cool. And I think I don't know a whole lot about Screaming Mad George before I watched this movie and like looked up stuff about him. I Now that I'm looking at his filmography, it's like, of course, it's incredible. He's responsible for that fucking insane like cockroach sequence in I believe it's Nightmare on Elm Street
Yes.
4.
So that's
Like that's the
yeah.
guy.
That's one thing. So Screaming Mad George is very well known for some of his like the surreal, like creature, like creepy. I'm gonna say creepy crawlies, because he he's basically
Yeah.
an expert at creating bugs and giant roach creatures, because he did the roach kill in Nightmare on Elm Street Part Four. He was also the effects guy
Mhm.
who did two of my favorite unsung sequels, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part Four and Five. And I know a lot of people probably aren't familiar with Silent
Yes.
Night, Deadly Night Part Four, but there's nothing but like ooey gooey bugs and giant roaches in that movie. And of course, he's responsible for all of that.
Ew.
But I mean, this guy also did Bride of Reanimator and The Guyver. It's like he has got the catalog. He is like, much like some of the other effects artists I've talked about, like he is somebody that just should be talked about so much more, because he not only is he screaming mad George, but he's a screaming mad genius. And I
Yeah.
believe he's originally from Japan. If I'm wrong, I'm Okay,
He
okay.
is,
Yeah, so
yes.
yeah,
He was born in
yep, so he's a
Osaka.
Japanese artist, and dude is just, like, so fucking creative, it's ridiculous. But I also wanna plug
Yeah, it's
I wanna plug, I love shitty sequels, and you know this. So, another movie that he did effects on is, Children of the Corn Part 3, which I love that fucking movie so much, and it has some of the most outlandish, what the fuckery, crazy effects in that movie, and this man handled it all, and that shit is amazing, and if you have not seen Children of the Corn Part 3, I'm telling you, fuck it, drop everything. Doesn't matter if you haven't seen the first two. Watch Children of the Corn Part 3 just for the awesome, gooey, crazy effects in that movie. And also look out for a very young, uncredited first timer, Charlize Theron. Anyway, I digress.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. That what? That is so cool. Okay, I'm adding that to my list now because I wanna point out a couple of other things from his filmography that I'm looking at that stand out to me. Society, which is one of the
yeah,
most batshit crazy special effects movies I've ever seen, and I've only seen it, like, once or twice just watching it, with Joe Bob on The Last Drive-In, which is great. And it's that movie's insane. And so you'll also see that he did effects for Predator and Big Trouble in Little China. So like I think the thread that's going through all of these movies is really out there creativity. Like I feel like if anyone else had been tasked to do a mutant snake movie, I feel like it would have been a lot more predictable.
right.
Like it probably could have still been cool, but like the fact that like he thought like, yeah, we'll have his like eyeball pop out and then like his tongue slide out. Like it very much reminded me of The Fly and like reminded me of just I don't know, it's just like something about just that ooey gooey body horror. Like I think it takes a lot of creativity to really like think of ways to get under people's skin, and he nailed
That's
it.
one thing I like about doing this show and the movies that we've put on our list to cover. You know, if you're talking about Screaming Mad George, usually people are going to cover movies like you just mentioned, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Bride of Reanimator, Guyver, Big Trouble in Little China, stuff like that. But no, motherfucker, we are sitting here talking about Curse 2 The Bite. Saying, you know, and then it's I'm not saying that
Yes.
Curse 2 is like some kind of hidden gem that needs to be discovered or rediscovered or whatever. But I just, you know, it's just the point that somebody the caliber of Screaming Matt George did the effects on this movie that nobody has really heard of or seen. And I think it just gives it another reason why it should get more attention that it deserves.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think there comes a point in every genre fan's life when you just feel like you've
Yeah,
seen it all. And even if you haven't, like there's so many movies that I still haven't seen, including, new movies, old movies, but you get to a point where a lot of them start to kind of blend in
right.
together and you're just wanting to see something unique and something out there. And so I really am loving being able to kind of like dig into the archive and just pull out these random movies that I would have never found Curse 2 organically. Like Curse 2, okay, just a quick tangent, like I couldn't even find it, like it's not going to pop up on my Netflix recommendations. I had to go to like Fandango now to like rent it,
Wow.
and that's like the only place I could find it. So it's just not like, and I even tried, I was like, you know what? I really liked having the Blu-ray of Popcorn. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just try to find a Blu-ray of this. And I literally couldn't find one. Like they were just sold out everywhere. So it's hard, definitely hard to come by. And I was just glad that it was streaming somewhere. But yeah, it's just nice to like have these, it's nice to be able to talk about these random little gems that would easily go missed
Right.
otherwise.
Well, Katie, go ahead and give me your final thoughts on Curse 2 The
Right.
Bite.
I feel like I like this movie. I don't know how much I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. I think it's the kind of thing if I saw it on TV, I absolutely would put it on and just enjoy it. I'm glad that I watched it. I think it's definitely worth watching, especially if you like special effects and if body horror like freaks you out, which it freaks me out. So like this movie definitely like got under my skin. Any kind of like transformation, like illness, venom, kind of that sort of thing just like really unsettles me. So I thought that was really effective. Um and yeah, like once again, the special effects are just absolutely bananas. And if you're afraid of snakes, maybe sit this one out. Or maybe you like being scared in that way, so watch it. But I think I doubt we will encounter a movie in this series that I will say don't watch. Like I think I'm gonna encourage you to check it out yourself, no matter what.
Yeah, so it's funny you said you don't know if you'll ever watch it again unless you catch it on TV or something, which we know is probably not going to happen. It's not going to pop up on TV. And it's this, like I said, this is probably the 10th
Yeah,
time that I've watched it. I saw it for the first time when I was probably like around 10 years old, caught it on late night cable. And of course, being the person that I am, I owned this motherfucker on VHS. Um, so of
of
course I'll
course.
be watching it again in the future. However, I will say that I don't think this is a movie for everyone. I think uh, for some
Hmm.
people it might be a tough sit. There is maybe probably certain moments that some people might consider a slog. I never get bored, but I can see where other people might get bored with certain moments. The pacing is a little slow. However, all I ask for people is to definitely give it a shot. I think it deserves a shot. And if for nothing, the final 13 minutes um, is well worth it. The
Absolutely.
last 13 minutes is completely makes everything else worth it. Like Katie was saying, like the scene where he literally pukes up a like clear, slimy, viscous fluid sack full of baby snakes, and it's like it slops onto the windshield and they're slithering everywhere. His tongue falls out, and his tongue even starts slithering. His eyeball his
Ugh.
eyeball just slides off and like falls off and like slides down the windshield. There's like giant gooey snake creatures coming out of him. His head splits open, and this giant snake creature comes out of his like neck. It like I said, the last 13 minutes. Also, if you pause this movie just right
Oh
towards
god
the
damn
end
it.
of the movie, they're like they're sliding around in like this mud pit or whatever, and Jill Schoelen is trying to get out of the mud pit to get away from her half snake, half man, 3 week old boyfriend. Who's turning into a snake monster? And if you pause it just right while she's crawling through the mud, her shirt rides up and you can see a good look at her butt. So,
Of course, you would point that out, but that is a beautiful segue into my next question, which I already know the answer to, but it's how does this rank on the TNA meter? There's really no T or A except for that moment that you just
so all right.
highlighted, but
You said
have
you
at
think
it.
you already know the answer, and you know me very well. What do you think my answer is going to be?
I think your answer is going to be that hmm. I think that you like Jill Schoelen enough that it's okay that there's no TNA in
So
this movie. I think that the shots of her legs make up
so
for
okay,
it.
yeah, you know me well because last episode when we talked about popcorn, I said of course there was no nudity at all. That maybe there's no TNA, and I genuinely felt like that was okay. Like the movie didn't need it, even though like I would have added some, it wouldn't need it. And then this movie, um, there is a lot of teasing. Like there's a shower scene with Jill Schoelen where you don't see
Yeah.
anything. Like there's so many like close up shots of her legs, and it's like, oh shit, but nothing ever happens. There's a lot of teasing. However, Jill Schoelen is a bomb diggity sexy woman. There's enough shots of her legs, and there's the muddy butt moment that you can pause. So I will give this movie a quarter star out of 5 on the TNA meter.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Quarter star out of
I
5.
think that's fair.
All right. Well, do you have anything else for our lovely listeners on tonight's episode?
No, I just, wanted to say thanks again for listening. And I wanted to remind everybody that we are on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Video Express Pod. So, let us know what you think. Tell us more about this director and about this movie. If you got some fun facts, we want to know. And if you have any ideas of things we should be talking about in the future, like, let us know. Also, what's your favorite snake movie? Let us know.
I'm a snake. So yeah, that's all we have for this episode of Video Express. We want to thank our sponsor, Lunch Meat VHS. Lunch Meat is your number one destination for the appreciation, celebration, preservation of VHS and video store culture. Check out their website at lunchmeatvhs.com and explore their store full of old school horror goodies on VHS, apparel, and much, much more. You can also follow them on Instagram at lunchmeatvhs.
Yeah, thank you, Lunch Meat VHS. That is so rad that they're hanging out with us for this episode. And yeah, just once again wanted to thank you guys for listening. And yeah, just thank you. And if you have any, if you have any thoughts on the show, we just want to make it better. We want to talk about the movies that you guys want to talk about. So yeah, hit us up.
Yeah, be sure to come check us out, rent a movie with us, and we'll talk about it all night long. Until next time, just remember, please be kind, rewind, but most importantly, just be kind. I'm Matt,
And I'm Katie.
and we'll catch you on the next episode of Video Express.
Bye bye.